Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf.
This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now, from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
And we welcome everyone to the show, brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15, Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, best in new inventory, great pre-owned inventory with the Sunbury Motors guarantee. Fabulous service department that backs it all up every step of the way. All right, well, we have, Audrey today at 1:15?
Yeah, we got a loaded show today.
Yeah. Well, speaking of loaded, here's your complaints.
Which actually are empty today, believe it or not.
Really?
They are. You know, it's just one of those days where you kind of appreciate what you have. I'm having one of those days where you appreciate what you have and all this stuff that
I've been telling you that for years. You finally
I guess I had an epiphany today.
Oh, good. Now we're starting to use the King's language. King sent me a text and he said he just had an epiphany. Oh, gee. Every time I turn around, somebody's having an epiphany.
Get the lingerie on the deck. Call the janitor.
And it's all stuff I've been telling you for years.
Well, sometimes it takes a while to sink in. Now, that doesn't mean that stuff can come up. The afternoon is young, but you never know. But I always give you my honest opinion, and that's kind of where I am right now.
How about that? This from the guy whose team has 13 guys making $5 million or more. That's great. Guys spent a lot of money.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, and you're not good.
No.
Now you're doing the same thing with your football team, and the same thing's going to happen.
Bring on the kids as far as the Yankees go.
Think the Eagles should do the same thing.
No, senor! No, senor! No, senor!
The first game they lose, they lose a game to Dallas, you are gonna be so panicked. It's gonna be one of those shows where you just sit back and go, okay, this will be fun.
Well, yeah, and it's never good to lose to Dallas. Doesn't matter.
Can see it now. Oh God.
Having said that, R.I.P. to the great Gil Brandt. I do have my respect there.
He changed a lot of things. Now, people talk about how the use of computer. What he did was that in order to organize their draft, he used a computer. That way, instead of like, okay, I saw this guy, this guy tested this way, did it. Okay, let's put all the stuff in there. That way we can remind ourselves about what there is about the guy. And that's what they did. And they drafted brilliantly. They stay relevant almost every year from 1965 until the mid to late 80s. They were relevant. And then finally Jerry Jones fired him along with Tom Landry. I think Tex Schramm retired. But they were relevant almost every year. I mean, and then you listen to him on Sirius XM, and they bring him in for the draft. It would take a little bit longer for him to get to his point, but it was a point worth waiting for. It was a point worth waiting for because he knew his stuff. All right. Audrey Snyder is going to join us on the show from The Athletic. We'll talk to her. Matt claims he's out of complaints for the day. Something tells me he'll be back with a vengeance tomorrow because all that appreciation stuff's going to go right by the boards.
Oh, my almighty!
I can see it now. What happened to... I could hear me. What happened to appreciating things? He goes, well, I can't tolerate stupid. I can hear it now.
You're not wrong.
Well, the openers tonight. By the way, 92,003 last night for Nebraska volleyball. So, all right. And we'll get to that a little bit later in the show. Come back, Audrey, in a moment here on News Radio 1070 WKOK. All right, Penn State, West Virginia, Saturday night in Beaver Stadium at 7:30. Covering it as always and doing her usual great job will be Audrey Snyder. Audrey, welcome back. Great to have you with us.
Hey, Steve. Happy almost Friday, right?
Yeah, we're sort of there. It's close enough. Minnesota's playing Nebraska tonight. Good enough for me. All right. So you wrote a column, and this probably was based off what Nick Saban had said about not releasing a depth chart. Mm-hmm. The only part that was comical to me about what he said was they'll see it and they'll think they're second and third team. Well, gee, Nick, when you tell them, okay, twos are up, you do that every day to them, Nick.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious, right, Steve? Like, hearing all this stuff, my initial thought was like, okay, Nick, like when you guys are practicing, do you not break down into ones, twos, and threes? Like, come on, Yeah.
All right. After the first game, everybody's already at least established a lineup. Is it more for you an issue because it's the opening game?
And here's the thing for me. Like, I am not surprised that Penn State doesn't release a depth chart. They haven't the last few years. Honestly, Steve, it's fine with me because I think it makes it more rewarding for the reporters who are at everything. Like, we have a pretty good idea of what that 3 deep looks like.
Sure.
But for me, it's the secrecy and silliness around it, right? Like, for me, it's fascinating that Penn State is not leaning into publicly that, like, hey, Drew Aller's your guy. Fans are excited about that. Like, you should lean into that instead of, okay, well, Neil Brown's not going to say who his quarterback is, so James isn't going to say who his is. Like, to me, the whole thing is just kind of laughable. And then you've got Tom Allen, who's like, yeah, we're not going to tell Ohio State who our kicker is. Like, come on, It's just to me, just a really weird kind of just where we're at in college football, right? If you're not required to submit something like that, you're not going to. Like, I completely get it from the coach's perspective. But, yeah, the excuses that people are coming up with for not releasing depth charts to me is just laughable at this point.
No offense, I don't think Tom Allen's kicker is going to be kicking a lot. All right, so I'm not all that worried about it. This team, what are some things? Everything is always going to be in an opening game context. Mm-hmm. What are some areas that you want to see this team as points of interest for you that could be writing points when you start writing next week?
I think the obvious one is the one that everybody's been talking about all offseason, and that's the quarterback. For me, it's a lot. It's difficult to gauge off of one game, right? And we're going to learn more this week than we will next week against Delaware, so you have that context.
Sure. Right.
But, yeah, you want to see Drew Aller make some big-time throws. To me, I think there's a chance for Penn State, especially nationally, to open even more eyes if they come out and Drew makes a few deep shots and says, hey, we know this run game is really good, but you're going to have to really be cognizant of this quarterback as well and the ways he can beat you. The thing that James Franklin said Wednesday night after practice when I asked him just plainly, what do you hope to learn about Drew Aller this Saturday? He said he doesn't want to see him do too much, and I think that's the other side of this, right? It's the week one, game one jitters, and how do you manage that? So for me, that's always a writing point. But beyond that, I'm really curious. Middle linebacker, we've heard so much that Kobe King's had a really good preseason. How much has he pushed Tyler Elsdon? Is there a new starter there? I'm curious to see how that kind of shakes out. And then obviously, the freshmen that they've greenlit already, Tony Rojas and King Mack, among them. I want to see what those guys look like. And it's just a really nice opportunity, especially because it's under the lights. It feels like you're going from preseason to like almost October in some regards, just because of it being a more interesting game than kind of your traditional season opener.
What do you think about West Virginia, or do you have any read on West Virginia?
Yeah, not a great read either. I mean, I think the thing here that you need to kind of fall back on is you look at the way that they've recruited, you look at the way that Penn State's recruited. It is vastly different. West Virginia is always a team that seemingly has had a lot of junior college guys. They've kind of always built their roster that way, regardless of who the coach is. So for me, it's kind of, okay, you look at it on paper, their offensive line should be pretty good. Well, I'm expecting Penn State's defensive line is going to be pretty good. I mean, I don't see any particular area here where West Virginia has an edge. But the thing that is interesting to me, at least, and for a lot of people who follow recruiting closely, this will be interesting to them too, I'm sure. Rodney Gallagher III is somebody, one of the top players in the state. Does he play this week? I mean, he's listed at like 5'11", 160, making the transition from quarterback at high school to wide receiver. So I don't know if we see him or not, but that's something. Another name of interest for Penn State fans is West Virginia wide receiver Devin Carter. He was committed to Penn State this winter out of the transfer portal from NC State, but then at the last minute switched to West Virginia. Well, he's expected to be their number one receiver. So, Penn State has plenty of their own questions at wide receiver, but West Virginia does as well.
The Landon Tangwall retirement, your thoughts when you heard that?
Really sad and surprising.
Yeah.
You look at it and you just absolutely hate to see that kind of thing. And my interactions with Landon have always been really positive. Definitely one of the better, more outgoing personalities on that team. And you hate to see that kind of thing. And obviously Penn State for at least the last week had a pretty good idea that this was going to be happening. So I think that's important to keep in mind too for fans. Like James Franklin isn't caught off guard by this. Like this is something that they were hoping wouldn't get to this point, but something that they knew was a really good chance might happen. So they've got, their contingency plan in place with J.B. Nelson. I do think it makes, these non-conference games more interesting for a guy like Venga. You look at, we've heard so much about Venga Ione and how strongly they feel about him. In my head, he's probably the top backup at both guard spots. So you look at that too and say, okay, well, what does this mean now? Because suddenly we were all kind of focused on right tackle, and my guess is that Caden Wallace is the guy at right tackle, but now it's like, okay, you have to keep an eye on left guard as well and see how Nelson looks. James Franklin said that they've felt that J.B. Nelson is maybe their most physical offensive lineman, so I think this is one of those weeks where you're going to see the depth on this roster that we haven't seen, necessarily every year of James Franklin's tenure here, but they have a chance to kind of showcase some of that depth now.
Yeah, no, it's right because, they do have, when you look at the guys, they have Drew Shelton, who's going to be back up Nick Dawkins, Venga Ioane. I mean, they do have guys. They have, they have probably 8 guys they could play now that I think can play for them, and that is a little bit different compared to a few years.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think they, the thing we kept hearing all preseason was they wanted to figure out who that 6th offensive lineman was. But you're right, Steve. I kind of wrote about this last night. I was like, I feel like they're more at like 7 or 8 guys now that they feel strongly about. They're on solid footing there, all things considered.
When you look at that secondary, last year it was a real strength for Penn State. And obviously, Gil Brandt was a big part of that because he was the quarterback of that secondary and could play in the box. Joey Porter Jr., of course, ended up being the first pick of the second round by the Steelers, 32nd overall. How do you look at this secondary despite losses like that?
I think it's still going to be really good. I think, we've heard so much all offseason about Johnny Dixon, and he's a guy that Terry Smith feels really, really strongly about. Of course, we're all writing and talking about Kalen King, and rightfully so, but they feel just as confident in Johnny Dixon. And I think, too, you look at those safeties, and we talked with Anthony Poindexter this morning on Zoom, they feel good about what they have. They won't tell us just yet who's starting, but they're going to play several guys back there, and I think we saw it last year. I mean, despite who starts, the number of snaps are going to kind of balance themselves out as the weeks go on. I mean, they feel good about Jalen Reed. They feel really good about Keaton Ellis. Key Wheatley's ball skills are things that we've heard about time and time again. KJ Winston is a name who we saw last year but continued to pop up this season and make plays. And then you've got freshman King Mack in there as one of those guys that they've greenlit. So I would imagine, he probably starts out on special teams, but then they work him in as they can on defense. But to me, Steve, and this is the thing that I go back to, and James Franklin said this initially back at Big Ten Media Days in July, they need a playmaker back there. Jair Brown was that ball magnet. Jaquan Brisker, the ball, sometimes it just finds guys. Well, they need that guy, that playmaker back there, and whether it's Keaton Ellis, Keith Wheatley, or someone else, to me, that's what has to kind of start to get figured out because it's a super stacked, super talented secondary.
All right. When you look at the wide receiver group, what do you want to see? And what are the keys for you, pro and con, on the wide receiver group as you look at the first, let's say, month of the season?
Yeah, I think they feel really strongly with their top two, with Keandre Lambert-Smith, with Harrison Wallace. But then beyond that, it gets a little interesting. And the thing that I'll say is I think we're going to see Keandre Lambert-Smith move around a lot. I think we're going to see that throughout the first 4 games because, yes, he can play in the slot. He's got the speed to do that. But I don't think they necessarily have as much depth at certain spots. So maybe you move him around to the outside. 1, it gives defenses more to think about. But 2, it lets you continue to kind of establish that depth there. So maybe you do see more of a Liam Clifford guy in that kind of role, a Caden Saunders in that kind of role. They've got plenty of numbers there in that receiving core, but it's figuring out what you have. And talking with Keandre Lambert-Smith Wednesday night, the thing that he said was that, hey, Malik McLean's a guy that we're not talking a ton about, but he's a big body guy that is going to find a way to help them. So a lot of guys there, Steve, but again, I think don't get so tied up in who's the starter, but look at the snap count, see what the reps look like, and then, they're going to play the best guys. We know that. So who establishes themselves, and then how does Dante Cephas figure in there? Because to me, that's the most intriguing thing with that receiving core. And, at this point in his development, making the jump here, how far behind is he? How quickly can he kind of figure this thing out to really make an impact? So, yeah, to me, the receiving core, I think we're all going to be writing a lot about it, especially for like the first month plus of the season.
Final question. This is very open-ended, so with all the movement that's going to be happening with realignment and so forth, what's your opinion? What is the state of the game today? What's the state of the quality of play in your mind and how things have played out? Where do you think the game itself is right now?
I think we're seeing players who are more highly specialized, better skill-wise than they've ever been at any point in time, right? Seems like every quarterback has their own trainer, all that. The product, I think, is better than it's ever been, but it's everything surrounding the product that, quite frankly, can be really sad. I mean, you look at realignment and the next wave this past summer that we went through, like, my initial reaction was, this is sad. Like, this stinks if you're one of the teams that's going to be left behind in some of these rivalries that we're not going to be seeing as much of moving forward. Just as a fan of the sport, you don't like to see that, but I understand why it's happening. I understand the TV money and all these things, and that you want to be well positioned to be in one of these 2 essentially super conferences or power conferences at this point. But yes, Steve, it's a lot to absorb, and you kind of look at it and you say, okay, well, we don't even know what the schedule next year is going to look like because we thought we had a pretty good read on it with the opponents, and then, here comes Oregon and Washington. Next year is going to be weird, so I think fans should really enjoy this year and kind of the last year of semi-normalcy as we know it in this crazy, crazy sport.
Audrey, thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you on Saturday.
You got it, Steve. Take care.
Audrey Snyder from The Athletic. You're still good, right?
I'm still good, yeah.
You're still appreciating life?
I am, yes.
But you've had to fight off some things, though, in the last 20 minutes.
Not as of now, but like I said, that can change.
You're getting closer. All right. I'm telling you. It's like working every day with Vesuvius. All right, we'll come back. Still have our high school roundtable today. We have Joe Putnam, Rodney Martin, the new voices of Beaver Stadium today, here on News Radio 1070 WKOK, brought to you by Sunbury Motors.
This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now, from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Nothing's changed in the last 5 minutes.
I can confirm that nothing has changed in the last 5 minutes.
You can confirm it or you can't confirm it?
No, I can confirm it.
Oh, you can confirm it?
Yes.
I may be checking in every 5 minutes. So. Do you need to know who Vesuvius is?
No, I'm aware of that.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure. The college football season began last weekend. Notre Dame had an exhibition game. It was such a big game, they played it out of the country. Just kidding you. But tonight, Nebraska and Minnesota play. And that'll be at the Bank in Minneapolis. Utah and Florida play tonight. And that'll be in Salt Lake. North Carolina State will take on UConn. That's on CBS Sportsnet tonight. ESPN has Florida, Utah. Fox has Nebraska, Minnesota. And those are the keynote games tonight that bear watching. How about that? Also, TJ Hawkinson is about to become the highest paid tight end in the league. 4 years, $68.5 million. Average value of the deal, $17.125. $42.5 million guaranteed. He will be the highest paid tight end in the league. Matt, what do you think of that?
No, good for him. He's a good tight end.
And I thought you were going to go, but Goddard's so much better.
No, Hawkinson deserves it. Absolutely.
He's a good player.
Yeah.
I mean, he's good. He's good. He's not he's not Travis Kelce.
No.
Somebody like that. But the highest paid player at a position changes every 2 days.
Exactly. Yeah. So somebody will top that.
Yeah, somebody will top that. And we're all waiting for the Bosa signing. I mean, Bosa's done as much in training camp to this point that he's actually done in like half the regular season games he's played in. He's another one of those guys.
There it is.
Okay, that you sit back, all right? And this goes for your guy Aaron Judge. What do I always say? All the time. He is really a great player when he plays. Okay? You are a zero when you're not playing. He misses a lot of games, Bosa. Bosa misses a lot of games. Okay. I mean, if I were the 49ers, I'd tell his agents, you can tell him to keep holding out all he wants because, we're sort of used to not playing with him anyway. That's what I'd...
Oh, my almighty!
I would. I tell him straight out, we're sort of used to not playing with you anyway. So, I mean, all the games he misses. I mean, a twinge and we're out. Could be a month. It's a bad twinge. Yeah. But, again, it's another one of those, like, when he plays, when the sentence starts that way, when he plays, he is a great player. And that is Bosa. When he plays, he is absolutely great out there. But that's when he plays. Okay. Now here comes one of the funnier ones. I laughed when Peter Burns said the Big Ten is overrated, calls them the Dallas Cowboys of college football. Peter Burns works for the SEC network. It's like, what do you think? What do you think Peter is going to think? Okay, Peter Burns, that's great. Who signed your checks? Just asking here for a friend. Oh, brother. Yeah. And Chase Young, stinger, uncertain for opener. Okay. God. I don't know. Sometimes I look at it and everybody's different. And, of course, you don't know the severity of certain injuries, but you start to question sometimes the ability of individuals to play through it. Seriously. Well, I think it's okay to have that question, but, the ability to play through it. So, I don't know. He's another guy that's missed a lot of time. When he plays, he's really good, but he doesn't play that often. Right? You look at Bosa. Let's look at Nick Bosa here. Nick Bosa. Let's just check and see how many games he's missed. Let's see. Nick Bosa's stats. As Matt types away. All right, let's see here.
We were supposed to be on at 135, right?
Are we supposed to do the high school guys now? I mean, I don't know.
Yep, we have them ready here.
Oh, well, you didn't tell me. Thanks. All right. Oh, God. All right, I thought they were 235. All right, so let's bring in the high school guys. Now, Greg and the Chief are here in the studio. Okay, as usual, your text arrived seconds ago. Get yourself together.
This service needs to be better here, Blue Hill.
Get yourself together. You changed up the play-by-play cut of the day. You did. Come on. What are you doing? What were you going to play for the Nebraska thing? Just the crowd applauding?
No, I had the PA announcer leading the way of revealing how many people were there.
Oh, did we really?
Yeah,
Yes.
but maybe I can play that a little later. I have a better play-by-play call today.
Well, you got Bryce Harper's 300.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, might as well play up to the hometown team instead of,
Yeah. So,
Nebraska, Omaha, and women's volleyball, the attendance is awesome, but yeah. All right, so everybody won. So, Greg, Chief, you're together, actually commiserating in the studio together about your team's winning.
It doesn't happen very often.
That's right.
Feel like we hit the daily double.
Yep, you would have won a lot of money betting on that one.
Yeah.
But, I mean, what did you see, Greg? What did you see? And then, Dave, what did you see? What did you see last week, Greg, that confirmed a couple of things to you, maybe even surprised you a little?
The speed of the Lewisburg defense. Defensively, they played very well. Made a lot of tackles behind the line of scrimmage. The defense stopped. Lewisburg turned the ball over deep in their own territory. The defense stepped up, got a 4 and out. Special teams probably surprised me more than anything for Lewisburg. They scored all 16 of their points, the special teams. A little disappointed in the offensive line play. They didn't hold their blocks. They got an initial block and their legs stopped. So those were the highlights and the lowlights, so to speak, for me.
Well, that's a surprise. Okay.
Yeah.
And
the Braves
you had drama.
Oh yeah, we had drama.
Yeah. And so did Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Braves defense probably played one of the best games that they played in the last 3 years. Central Columbia's offense did not score a touchdown. It was a kickoff return right after the Braves went ahead to 7-0. So the Braves, a couple of times, when Central had to go in 4-down territory, and that became very evident in the fourth quarter. They stopped them. And, I'm going to tell you right now, Steve, last year one of my big criticisms was the fact that when they would throw the ball against the Braves secondary, nobody would go to the ball. And this time, everybody went to the ball. It was the most aggressive secondary and linebacking crew that I've seen, and really they didn't give Central Columbia's receivers any openings at all. So defense looked great. Offense scored a touchdown with the spread, but then I don't know if Coach Kaiser decided to scrap the spread for a little bit, but he went straight T, and they scored 2 touchdowns. Two touchdowns. So the offensive line, when they ran the ball, looked good. When they tried to pass, when they were in the spread, not so good. If it wouldn't have been for the size of our quarterback and his ability to get away, we probably wouldn't have had 2 of the big plays in the game that got him scores.
What did each of you learn about your team because they were in such tight games that really only a tight game can reveal?
For Lewisburg, the kids don't quit. They just played their hearts out the whole game. The other thing that I learned was the coach is not afraid to put anyone in at any time in the game. We had some kids that were going both ways, It's a tie ball game, 13-13. A kid needed a little breather. He puts a sophomore or freshman in to play a linebacker position or defensive back position. They're not afraid to play the kids. Yeah. The
Shikellami's team, and I will say Central's team, were in excellent shape. They really. I was talking to Greg. I didn't even see our big linemen standing there with their hands on their knees once. So that was a big plus. The other thing, we have some freshmen that are going to make a difference, and I read it in Coach Kaiser's preliminary synopsis of the team, and sometimes you just wonder, but there's 3 or 4 freshmen that are starting, and they played well last year in the 8th grade team. And I know you know this, Steve. You go from 8th grade football to varsity football. Yeah. That's like going from high school to the pros, I think, to some of these kids. They did a nice job. Mm-hmm. And Central was very physical, and our kids were too. So about the coolest thing was the fact that it's the first time since 2016 that our kids could say they're 1-0. Yeah, and that's pretty awesome. I'm telling you. It wasn't a sad time in Mudville. It was a happy time in Shikellamy.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. And look, it does a world of good for confidence. So let's just get to this week now. So, I'll start with you, Greg, and then because Shikellamy has the big opener on the field they get to play on once in a while this year. So, interesting way of doing it. But what about this week? Because you talk about being 1-0 since 2016, Dave. How about being 2-0? All right, so Greg, go ahead.
Jersey Shore is going to be a different matter altogether. They have an offense that can throw the ball, they can run the ball. They're going to run 90 plays, in the game, in a high school game, and unless Lewisburg does something to control the ball and has some sustained drives. Every 15 to 18 seconds, they're running a play. It's like the coach I talked to, the Lewisburg coach last night, he said they're running a play before the officials are even ready for them to run a play. They get lined up that quickly. They've been working on that in practice with the kids this week, but it's different seeing it in a ball game, live ball game. And it's not that Jersey Shore wows you with all kinds of trick plays. They only run certain basic plays, but they just run them over and over and over again, and they have the athletes to do it. And it's going to be interesting. They were ahead 41-0 against Pottsville last weekend. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to be surprised. Lewisburg's going to have to score a lot of points to stay in this game, and I don't know if they can.
The Braves have Mifflin County this week, and I saw them play Central Mountain last week, and Central Mountain really was not in the ball game. Mifflin County won by 40-some points, and they played every aspect of their game was pretty solid. My only problem is I don't know how good Central Mountain is. If our defense plays as well against Mifflin County as they did against Central Columbia, we'll be in the ball game. And I know that they're going to make some adjustments with the spread offense. It has those 5 guys in the line up front, and if they do leave a back in the backfield, they're going to have to do a better job of picking up pass rushers. And but other than that, I hope that the atmosphere of playing on the turf for the first time and being in the stadium doesn't overwhelm them, but I don't think it will. It'll probably be one of our most well-attended games of the year, even though Mifflin County's pretty far away. There'll be a lot of home kids there, or home field there. So, I'm going to be very optimistic. I think we'll play well, and I don't think we have to score a lot of points. We just have to keep Mifflin County from scoring, and that's when you got a good defense, that's always a positive.
Look at Dave starting to swagger a little bit at 1-0, huh?
Yeah, well, hey, listen. You think I'm swaggering? You should see my partner, all right, the play-by-play guy, okay? He came out of there, even though he's trying to fix all the problems with everybody else's equipment that night, he came out of there, his feet were a little higher off the ground, too, because it's been a long time since we've been able to call a game like that.
S-U-I-T, that spells Suda!
Normally it's a feet when he gets his feet and lifts them off the ground. All right, so, well, good. That's great. All right, guys, thanks so much.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Meanwhile, Matt talked with Zach Showers about Selinsgrove this week.
Thanks, Steve. It's always good to be back. So last week it was a exciting week 1 for Selinsgrove. The Seals came into the game playing a 5A Delaware Valley team that was ranked up to 7th in the state in 5A. They ended up coming up with a 28-21 victory. It was quite an interesting game. There's a storm that rolled in about a half hour before the game and really turned the humidity up. And that was a real concern with just the a slightly smaller roster compared to a big Delaware Valley team. But Selinsgrove was able to get up by 2 scores late in the game. A lot of that was on the legs of senior running back Tucker Teets, who had 147 yards in the game. And then Delaware Valley ended up getting the ball back with about 2 minutes left in the game and rolled down the field. And Seals ended up holding on a 4th and goal at the 1-yard line with about 13 seconds left in the game. So it was definitely an exciting game for Selinsgrove to be able to come out on top. Overall, I think the team was very pleased, of course, with week 1 and not having a second scrimmage. It definitely makes things a little bit more difficult, just not having that extra week to prepare and iron out some things. So there was a lot that Selinsgrove can work on, just with some missed assignments on offense, defense, and special teams. It was a game of field position. Selinsgrove was able to pin Delaware Valley deep a number of times. All 4 of their kickoffs were touchbacks, and then another 2 punts were inside the 20-yard line. So it was definitely a great opening win, one that was an instant classic and something that hopefully this team can just continue to build on. This week, the Seals take on Juniata, a team that lost in mercy roll fashion to Troy, a AA team in the northern tier of the state. Troy has been traditionally pretty good the past few years, so it'll be an interesting matchup for Juniata. Last year, Selinsgrove faced Juniata and ended up beating them 17-14. It was a game where quarterback Mark Pastore was knocked out of the game early in that game, and they were down 14-0 and later rallied behind. Wide receiver turned quarterback Gavin Bastian to win 17-14 in what was a pretty amazing win considering all the circumstances. Juniata did lose a lot last year from last year's team. but they do return two kind of key cogs from last year. Seth Lobb, who's a senior linebacker and fullback who has 1,000 yards rushing in his career, and a really good linebacker. And then the guy I think that Selinsgrove is going to have to focus on is Jasper Sheps, who's a sophomore wide receiver, and he had 6 catches for 178 yards and 2 touchdowns last week against Troy. So that'll be a bit of a challenge. Selinsgrove, again, will just look to be able to clean up some things from week 1 and really hope to be able to get the running game going with Tucker Teets and hopefully hit some plays in the passing game with Mark Pastore to his wide receivers. Thanks, Steve, as always, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Zach. Appreciate it. Right. Are you getting yourself together? I mean, you've now sent me 16 different play-by-play cuts for the play-by-play cut of the day. I mean, have you settled in?
I think we're good now, yeah.
We only have to pick one.
Sometimes it's hard to choose, but just in this case, because the game was in the afternoon and I listened to it on the way home, it's not in like my mind to think, oh, let's use it because it happened last night. Like I put myself in that rhythm, so the afternoon game kind of threw me off a little bit. Oh yeah, we can use this cut.
Like, it's yesterday. It encompasses the entire day, man.
Yes. It just dawned on me, so we'll have that coming up.
You should see all the texts he sent me today. Like, and several of them are duplicated. It's like, okay. Every time I look over, I got a 1. It's Matt. It's the same one as before. What are you doing?
Some of the times I just have to hit my phone on the side, I think.
Company should get you a new phone. And a company car, too. What do you think?
Hey, I'd be all for it.
I know you would be. Somebody's going to fight for him. All right. We'll come back. The 2 new voices of Beaver Stadium join us next half hour. Rodney Martin, Joe Putnam.